as tankers cautiously return to parts of the Red Sea and fuel costs rise. Across multiple African economies, a larger system is taking shape. Washington and Brussels are pouring billions into new corridor systems. China is expanding zero-tariff access. African governments are tightening control over minerals, and trade routes themselves are becoming strategic assets. This week's Africa Weekly Record examines the struggle over Africa's corridors, prices, and leverage. Across southern and central Africa, a new infrastructure struggle is accelerating. The Lobito Corridor is no longer simply a proposal on paper. It is moving into execution, backed by billions of dollars. From the United States, the European Union, development finance institutions, and private operators, the corridor is designed to connect the copper belt of Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo to Angola's Atlantic coast. At the center of the project sits one strategic calculation: critical minerals, copper, cobalt, and the transport systems that move them. For Western governments, Lobito represents an attempt to diversify supply chains away from routes and systems heavily influenced by Chinese infrastructure financing. For Angola, Zambia, and the DRC, the corridor offers another export route beyond existing eastern and southern systems, but rail infrastructure alone will not decide whether the corridor succeeds. Customs coordination, border efficiency, regulatory integration, freight reliability, and corridor governance may matter just as much as steel tracks themselves, because Africa's next strategic competition may not be fought only through mines. It may increasingly be fought through corridors. The question is no longer simply who mines Africa's minerals. It is increasingly who moves them. Even as parts of the Red Sea cautiously reopen to shipping traffic, the disruption has already reshaped freight costs across multiple African economies. For months, many vessels rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope instead of using shorter Red Sea passages. That added distance increased fuel consumption, shipping time, and insurance pressure. The result was not confined to maritime trade. The effects traveled inland. South Africa has continued facing pressure across fuel pricing systems and freight congestion. Electricity tariff increases are also adding strain to household affordability and industrial operating costs. Across East Africa, imported goods became more expensive as shipping delays and freight inflation filtered through supply chains. Food systems have also felt the pressure because modern food affordability is no longer determined only by harvests. It is increasingly shaped by logistics, by fuel, by shipping, by transport reliability. And this matters because inflation today is often transmitted through systems people never directly see: ports, tankers, insurance, freight corridors, shipping routes. The freight system itself has become part of the inflation story. Across the continent, governments are increasingly trying to renegotiate the structure of extraction itself. Mozambique has introduced reforms targeting greater national benefit for mining activity. Namibia continues tightening restrictions connected to raw mineral exports. The Democratic Republic of Congo is pursuing refining ambitions tied to battery and critical mineral industries, and local beneficiation is becoming one of the most important policy words in African industrial strategy. The underlying idea is simple. If Africa supplies strategic minerals to the world, then more value should remain within African economies before export occurs. But turning that ambition into functioning industry remains difficult. Processing infrastructure requires electricity, stability, transport reliability, skilled labor systems, and long-term financing. At the same time, external competition is intensifying. The European Union, the United States, China, all are attempting to secure long-term access to critical minerals and strategic transport systems. That is why new institutional structures are emerging, including the AU-US Strategic Infrastructure Working Group, because the competition is no longer only over resources underground. It is increasingly about who controls processing, transport, and industrial integration across the supply chain itself. Africa is no longer negotiating only over extraction. It is increasingly negotiating over processing, logistics, and control of the chain itself. Kenya and Somalia continue phased reopening efforts across key border crossings after nearly 15 years, reconnecting formal customs systems and regional trade routes across parts of East Africa. Tunisia has unveiled plans for a North Africa to Sahel overland corridor designed to connect Mediterranean trade systems toward Niger, Mali, and Chad. Ghana is intensifying efforts to position Boankra as a preferred inland logistics hub connecting Sahel trade routes toward Atlantic export systems. Cape route shipping. Diversions continue increasing. Operational pressure on South African ports and freight handling systems. Ghana has raised concerns to continental institutions following xenophobia-related tensions involving African migrants in South Africa. Nigerian authorities stated they are prepared to facilitate movement and protection measures for Nigerian citizens should tensions worsen further in South Africa. If Lobito works, if export bans become processing industries, and if African states secure the corridors connecting ports, rail, minerals, and power systems, the continent enters the next decade with more leverage over global supply chains than at any point in generations. But if governance fragments, while infrastructure races ahead, these same corridors may simply redistribute dependency across new external actors. Because in 2026, the struggle is no longer only over resources. It is over routes, and whoever shapes the routes increasingly shapes the future.